first Audit Committee meeting of the new council. I've got a statement that I have to read out because the meeting is held remotely and also in person. So this meeting is held remotely and also in person and will be filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcast available through the council's website. The council is a data controller under the General Data Protection Regulations and the Data Protection Act (FTP). We broadcast and record council meetings, fulfil a public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collection during the process will be retained in accordance with the council's published policies available through the council's website. Members of the council are reminded that they should follow the council's established meetings protocols, including around the use of the chat facility, and that comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants of the meeting, which may include members of the public who have received invites to the meeting. So we'll now go on to the roll call.
Okay. We will now move to roll call. The following members please indicate if they are present at the meeting either in person or remotely. Councillor Crowther.
Remotely.
Councillor Curley.
In the chamber.
Councillor McCabe. Councillor McCluskey.
In the chamber.
Councillor McCormick.
Remotely.
Councillor McGuire.
Remotely.
Councillor McVeigh.
Remotely.
Councillor Nelson.
Chamber.
Councillor Reynolds.
In the chamber.
Councillor Wilson.
In the chambers.
Okay. And we have an apology from the provost who won't get to. Okay, so we now move on to the business of the day. Oh yeah, any declarations of interest. Now we move on to agenda number 2.
Thanks, Chair. So this is the regular progress report to the Audit Committee on internal audit activity undertaken since the last Audit Committee meeting in February. There were 2 audit reviews finalised, including education and control self-assessment. Overall, it was a strong control environment opinion. There were no significant issues identified, and an action plan is in place to address all issues by the 31st of August. The second audit we finalised was in relation to Greener Motion Terminal, and this was our project assurance review. Overall, it was a strong control environment opinion. There were no significant issues identified, and an action plan is in place to address all issues by the 30th of June. Progress against the 21-22 audit plan is set out in section 3 of the report, and the final 2 reviews are now complete. In relation to corporate fraud activity, due to the ongoing COVID-19 situation, the fraud team have not been undertaking any home visits in relation to their work. However, they have been accessing other information systems available in order to gather evidence in relation to the cases being investigated, and have obtained a number of good outcomes in that regard. Since the last Audit Committee meeting in February, the fraud resource has been primarily focused on progressing the National Fraud Initiative investigations for the 2020 exercise, which is more or less complete. The team are also undertaking quarterly checks of employee expenses and client accounts, and a draft report is currently being prepared in relation to employee expenses. The team continues to undertake work in relation to referrals from other services and whistleblowers in relation to blue badges, council tax and other inquiries. There were no significant investigations carried out in the period. In relation to internal audit follow-up, the status report is attached to Appendix 2 to the report. There were no actions due for completion by the end of April, and there were 4 current actions being progressed by officers. Thanks, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions from members? See.
Yes, just to understand you on this corporate fraud activity, how do we assess whether we're getting value for money from the activities that have been undertaken?
Through you, Chair, in terms of the outcomes, we have a number of financial outcomes that are attached. So what we do when we find, particularly in relation to council tax reduction scheme, council tax single person discounts, we monitor the financial value of these cases to the council, and those are reported primarily through the National Fraud Initiative updates, and you'll see that in the table that there's been a significant amount of rebillings that have been undertaken in the year, and that hopefully gives Audit Committee assurances in terms of the added value carried out by the corporate fraud officers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just with respect to section 5 of the appendices, page 20, it lists the total current actions not yet due, red, amber and green. Also the amber are contained within the report, but there's quite a few green ones. Also, I'm aware that the green are related to minor improvements, but some of them are going back as far as 2017. I just wonder if it'd be possible to give an update of when we think we'll be able to get those 20 elements, what do you call it, closed down.
Through you, Chair, so the three outstanding in relation to 2017-18, they're in relation to the SWIFT implementation, the replacement system. So we carried out an audit in that year ahead of the new system being implemented, and just as a result of COVID, the situation it's had to be realigned in terms of the purchase of the new system. Has taken some time. Given the circumstances, we've got an audit quality assurance programme of work for the 22-23 audit plan, and as part of that work we will pick up again on those three green issues to make sure that the issues that were raised at that time have been duly considered by the team as they move forward into the build and design stage of the new system once it becomes implemented. Hopefully that answers your question.
Just a wee summary. Thank you. Just on that, you also mentioned those three there, but will that piece of work also include the other green items as well?
Through you, Chair. So we have a regular process, a monthly process of regular follow-up of green issues. What we do is we follow them up as and when they're due, and if there is a revised date, we will obviously discuss that with management. There is ongoing risk assessments that are undertaken to review the audit plan, and where we consider that a green issue is perhaps becoming more urgent to be implemented, we would then ask the management of the particular area if there's any significant issues arising out of not implementing that particular green issue. The green issues that we tend to raise are around procedural documentation, having gaps that we've identified in walkthroughs, or there could be process improvements. For example, they could have a system that's based on hard copy records, and we make a recommendation to move that to an electronic platform such as Excel. And it's just sometimes it just takes a bit of time for those green issues, which are more control improvements, to actually be implemented. So we do keep a watching brief on those, and like what we do with red and amber, they're followed up as and when the action falls due. We have a central database, and out of that database there's a report generated for each auditor, and each auditor has responsibility for following up every action that they've agreed through their audit process, and they will then inform myself in terms of action plan status, and particularly with red and amber issues which are more critical to be implemented, but also with the green issues, and if there's any concerns at that point we would then have a further discussion with management. Hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, okay.
I realise there's people on the chat. I'm going to go to Councillor Plissy here to stand up.
Thank you, Kabira. Thank you for this report. Just two questions relating to it's page 5 of the report, page 12 of the pack, on the National Fraud Initiative exercise. Firstly, how do these numbers compare, as compare nationally? Like, how are we performing against other authorities? And then secondly, just on the total, the 98,000, what's the progress been like in terms of recovery of that 98,000?
Thanks. Through you, Chair. So in terms of how we compare against the other public sector, obviously I've got direct experience of Western Bartonshire Council, so we are seeing similar results. But in terms of Inverclyde, since the exercise started in 2006 and 2007, there has been a dramatic decrease in the number of matches that are highlighted for investigation. The team have done a lot of work with services to improve control environments. So for an example of that could be in the creditors process, is to look at why duplicate creditor payments are arising, and working with services to improve their control processes. Blue badges, understanding why blue badges haven't been cancelled off in a timely manner in the system, to just try and prevent some of these matches appearing in the future, is an ongoing piece of work, and it's certainly something the team are very focused in achieving. So hopefully that answers your first question. Could you just repeat your second question for me?
The second question was just around the 98,000. Like, what progress are we making towards recovering that 98,000?
Through you, Chair. So we have a process in place where the team will communicate on the findings and in terms of the outcomes with the various service areas, and in terms of creditor matches, there's already credit notes being applied to particularly suppliers that we've got a current ongoing relationship with, where it's a creditor where it was a one-off payment that has been duplicated, we will raise an invoice to get that payment back, and we've been very successful in historic years in being able to do that. For the council tax cases, there's a rebilling process that happens, and the adjustment just goes through the annual. The discount will be removed, the rebilling will go back to the date of when the discount should have been removed, and there will be the rebilling issued to the liable party, or we'll have a payment agreement in place, and that's all done through the finance service. But there's a very good communication between the fraud team and predominantly the finance team in terms of progressing these issues.
Great, thank you.
So I'm going to the chat now. Councillor McVeigh.
Yeah, thanks, Katrina. Several questions. Andy, on page 18, section 4, refers to the analysis of missed deadlines. I noticed, looking back, that this item has had 3 missed deadlines, and further back, 2 deadlines were to be advised. I'm just wondering why these don't appear on the report to give members an indication of how things are going, because we're now looking at a 3-year period to conclude this action.
Thanks, Chair. So the process has been escalated through the corporate management team, and the original action has been superseded in terms of how the service is going to progress with that action plan. So there is detailed comments at section 4 under the management comments, and they are confident that these new timescales will be achieved. It has been quite challenging in terms of moving away from the system and the processes that have in place currently, but there is a clear direction of travel, and there is clear commitment from senior management to achieve the deadlines that have been set. The corporate management team do keep an active focus on this report, and particularly the analysis of missed deadlines at section 4. Thank you.
Could you tell me, Andy, who sets the deadlines originally? Is that the services?
Through you, Chair, they're set by the services, but the auditor also has a role to play in terms of making sure that the date is realistic. For example, it could need committee approval, it could need consultation processes. So we will try and liaise with the service when we're setting some of these action dates, and the majority of them, you'll see further on in the report. The council's got a good track record of implementing on internal and external audit action plans. It's just sometimes, the timescales slip for various reasons, but that's why the report is here to transparently report to members the reasons for some of the slippage, to give that degree of assurance that they are back on track, and there will be a process to resolve these in the earliest opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Andy. Just a further couple of questions. And I refer to a further report, I think agenda item 5, where it's just a quote from paragraph 2.3. When action, the recommendation made in internal audit reports should provide management with additional comfort that the system of internal control operates as intended. It is therefore imperative that agreed actions are implemented by management. Now, as a senior auditor, are you comfortable with a 3-year timescale to close out an AMBAR action?
Through you, Chair, in terms of the particular action that you're talking about, I think that the original action was appropriate at the time, but given the way that the digital strategy is moving forward, and obviously we had the impact of COVID, so a lot of work couldn't be undertaken during that time frame. There are other mitigations happening out in education establishments in terms of raising awareness of data that is being shared and the better ways to do it. So there are compensating controls in place, but in terms of moving forward, I think it is important that we do keep a watching brief on this particular item, and it is something that the corporate management team regularly reviews and challenges relevant officers on. So there is a good lot of focus, and it is actually one of the issues that will continue to be reported through our annual governance statement. So where there isn't sufficient progress taken with a particular action, we will then look to consider whether that needs to come through as a governance issue, and that will come through in terms of the annual governance statement for 21-22, which will form part of the annual report and accounts. Hopefully that answers your question, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you. I take your point regarding the watching brief. Just one final question. Is there any intention or to give us some more detail on this in the upcoming reports? Or I would rather have some details to how it's going rather than wait another year and find that perhaps the deadline hasn't been met.
Through you, Chair, I can ask for an update to be provided if the committee would accept that.
That would be fine, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yep,
So
thank you.
I'll move on now to Councillor Crowther.
That's fine, thank you, Convener. If I just a couple of questions on pages 9 and 10 of the hard copy, and that's to do with the Greenock Ocean Terminal Project Assurance Review. I do note that there is 3 projects that are identified. That's the Greenock Ocean Terminal, the former Inverkip Power Station site, and Inch Green. And on the second page, it mentions here in addition, external organisations play a central role in progressing Inverclyde City Deal projects. Is the project assurance review for the other 2 sites via the City Deal project, or in the case of Inch Green, is it via the joint venture company?
Through you, Chair, so the report that we carried out, project assurance review, was on the Greenock Ocean Terminal. We liaise quite closely with Glasgow City Council Audit Department, who have the Programme Management Office, and they carry out reviews at a higher level in terms of the City Deal project. So what we try and do is complement that work at a local level, where they might not get the detail of it. So our audit was to complement the work that has previously been carried out by the City Deal auditors in relation to the Greenock Ocean Terminal. So we share knowledge and share learnings from all of the audits, and that was really the focus for us to be able to provide other assurances through Inverclyde Council's Audit Committee that the project assurance work was undertaken. Hopefully that answers your question.
Your sounds off, Councillor Crowther. Are you happy with that answer?
Yes, I'm quite happy with that, thank you.
Okay.
Should I maybe just ask
Sure.
what point there? Presuming there's 3 projects here, right? So you maybe pick one as an example, and if you're assured that processes are sound in one of them, it's likely to be the same in the other 2. So that's a sample. Is that right?
Through you, Chair, yes, what we were looking at was the project management arrangements for the City Deals. Now, obviously, Greenock Ocean Terminal is further forward in terms of what we were able to audit, but it may be in future years we will pick one of the other projects which is maybe progressing further as well, but we'll liaise with the city deal auditors as well to make sure we don't duplicate any of the work that we've carried out, and we give maximum the coverage for both the city deal cabinet arrangement of review and also Inverclyde Council's Audit Committee assurances. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Is there any follow-up questions from members? Okay, now move on to agenda number 3.
Thanks, Chair. So this is the status report that relates to the external audit action plans that were due at the end of April. There was one action due which was not fully completed by the deadline. The management comments for this action are set out at section 4 of the status report. The external audit actions will be reviewed and commented on by the external auditors as part of their annual audit for 21-22, which will be reported to members later in the year. I'm happy to take any questions. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from members? No questions, right, move on to agenda 4.
Sorry, Convener, I did have one question.
Sorry,
I didn't realise it. Could I ask on big page 27, local development plan, expected date to be advised, any progress on that since the pre-agenda?
Through you, Chair, I don't have an update.
Thank you.
okay. No further questions from members? Yeah. We're on to agenda item number 4. Andy?
Thanks, Chair. So this is an update report which sets out current progress in relation to the risk management monitoring and reporting process, which was approved at the January Audit Committee meeting, and it sets out Appendix 1 timeline for implementation. It's a straightforward report, but I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions from members? Councillor Cummins?
Thank you, Convener. Just with respect to the risk management strategy, it says from a paragraph 4.3, it says, first level of risk management strategy establishes consistent, effective framework and approach to manage risk across the organisation at all levels to support the achievement of corporate outcomes. I'm just wondering how we actually do that at all levels and how that is rolled out within the organisation, because obviously different levels would require a different, what they call it, acknowledgement of risk and a different, what they call it, approach to dealing with that. So I'm just wondering how we deal with that and getting a coherent set of training arrangements for our staff.
Through you, Chair. So the risk management strategy that we have is we use common risk language, we use common areas of risk, and it's a proportionate scoring methodology. I'm running a training session tomorrow which will bring in more detail in terms of the risk management process, so we will go through that in a lot more depth. But we have risk registers at the sort of service level, we have it at a project level, we have directorate risk registers, and we have the corporate risk register, and they all look at likelihoods and impact over the same time period, the same scale, but it is always with, in terms of impact of that particular service on the achievement of the council's objectives that are set out within the corporate plan. I am responsible for assisting officers in their identification of risk. I will run facilitated workshops with services. I'll provide training to new service managers as they come on board, just to explain the sort of standard process for managing risk. We will assist them in terms of the mitigation strategies that we can put in place, and the tolerance levels that they will have, within their own remits, and what really needs to be escalated. It's quite an embedded process within Inverclyde. We developed the strategy over 10 years ago, and there's regular dialogue at directorate management teams, corporate management teams, and indeed service level. And as part of the annual governance statement process as well, we regularly assess against Principle F of the SIPFA Guide to Good Governance, which considers managing risk, and that's really about ensuring there's a consistency in terms of how all heads of service are reviewing risk, how they're monitoring risk, how they're scoring risk and assigning risk. So hopefully that gives you a bit of assurance over the process.
Thank you, Chris.
Sure.
I think one of the things I was maybe getting at in the question was about how we identify risk and how risk is identified at all levels, and maybe even at an operative level. Also, you've got the senior management, talking about management level risk and people managing risk, but they're not aware of the risks. And so just make sure that people in the organisation have got an idea of what risk is and how they identify it and how they actually bring it up to the appropriate level as well.
Right, through the chair, there is an e-learning module for risk management which staff have opportunities to complete, and certainly we promote that service risk registers are discussed at service management team meetings, individual team meetings. There should be that discussion, but certainly there is a good awareness of risk management with officers within Inverclyde Council Services, so hopefully that gives you some assurance.
Thank you.
Alan, would you like to come in?
And just to provide further reassurance to Councillor Curley that the Policy Resources Committee will be asked to consider a new format of committee report in June, and within that there's a specific section on risk, so it means that all reports, all relevant reports that come to committee, risk will have to be assessed by the author of the report and the director and the head of service before it comes in front of members. So that will begin further to embed the need to consider risk in everything we do.
Okay.
I was just going to ask in terms of paragraph 4.6, where the last review I thought the risk register by the CNP was in 2017, and the appendix obviously it's due for July 2022, well, that's 5 years. Has that time frame been impacted by COVID? Would we expect to see a more regular review than 5 years?
Through the chair, so the corporate risk register, the work has always been undertaken. Services review their risk registers on at least an annual basis, and directorate risk registers are reviewed at least annually. The frequency has been impacted over the last couple of years as a result of COVID, but we developed specific risk register in relation to COVID, and that was managed through the Council's resilience management team. So it took on board operational risk, financial risk, any legal risks or reputational risks that had arisen as a result of COVID. But the work, just hopefully to give members assurance that the work hasn't stopped, it didn't halt. It was just the formalisation of the process that perhaps wasn't as robust as it could have been, which is why the report came to the January committee to try and bring that sort of formality to the process and embed it within the committee reporting format. So hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So any follow-up questions on that item? Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 5.
Thanks, Chair. So this is the internal audit annual report and assurance statement for 21-22, which informs the Council's annual governing statement. The report provides a summary of the work of internal audit over the period, which has already been reported through the various progress reports to the Audit Committee. The overall audit opinion is satisfactory. There were no audit reports which had an overall unsatisfactory or requires improvement rating, and although a limited number of amber issues were noted, generally the controls evaluated were adequate, appropriate and effective to provide reasonable assurance that risks are being managed and objectives should be met. Apologies, Chair, there's an error at section 2.4 of the report in relation to the control environment opinion for CSA education. It should be strong, but it doesn't impact the overall control environment opinion. The report also recognises the continued impact of the COVID-19 pandemic throughout the periods which continue to test how well the Council's risk management, governance and internal control framework operated. And it was also encouraging to note the high percentage of audit action plan implementation by officers, and action plan status has continued to be regularly incorporated into CMC updates and audit committee progress reports, and that did help keep a focus on implementation of agreed actions. The report also recognises that the internal audit team had some challenges in meeting performance standards, particularly around issuing reports in line with agreed timescales, and also marginally missing the overall target for audit plan delivery at the 31st of March, but both the remaining audits have been finalised and there's no impact on the overall audit opinion. Happy to take any questions on the report. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions from members?
Thank you. Just on a couple of points, page 4, section 3.4 actually, obviously we've got the insurance. It's been overall grading of satisfactory, and previously it was satisfactory. I'm just wondering, we'd hoped to have seen improvement, because obviously the risk-based purchase margins went from satisfactory to sort of wrong, and we've only identified 1 amber and 2 green there, so I'm just wondering, do we expect that obviously that this will be revisited again to see if we can get it to a strong classification, or do you think there is still an underlying issue within that, within the insurance aspects?
Through you, Chair, so the action plan is progressing with the insurance audit, and once the results of that action plan are completed, the risk score will be re-evaluated. We do that on an annual basis. But given it was a satisfactory control environment opinion, I wouldn't expect to revisit insurance within the next 12 to 18 months. But we'll certainly, it does form part of the overall annual review of what we call the audit universe. And if there are any changes in the control environment, that will be programmed in to the risk matrix, and we will take cognizance of any other control environment impacts that come to our attention. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Just on page 42, just to understand what's going on here, the National Fraud Initiative, 84 matches were investigated in the period. How does that relate to the numbers in the earlier paper? Because I know that's for a different period, but it seems a lot lower. That is just question 1. And question 2, on those numbers, it's obviously telling us what was investigated, but do we have any, where was the reporting done for the outcomes of those investigations on an annual basis, or is it just on a rolling basis? Thank you.
Thanks, through you, Chair. So in terms of the 84, that's been since the last audit committee, so the team have actively opened and investigated 84 cases out of the 2,000 odd that are sitting there on the database for us to investigate. So they've carried out 84 cases for investigation. In terms of the fuller report, there will be a national report issued by Audit Scotland just probably after the summer recess, and that will come forward to the next audit committee, and that will give the annual the results for that particular exercise, the full results in terms of to the 31st of March. It will give the full results for the 2020 exercise, and will also give an update on the progress in terms of planning for the 2022 exercise. So it's a constant ongoing process.
Great, thank you.
Yes, Wilson.
Yeah, Andy, you mentioned there was 84 investigated out of 2,000. Is that 2,000 suspects or 2,000 possible matches? Thank you.
Through you, Chair. So the National Fraud Initiative, it's run by the Cabinet Office, but within Scotland it's coordinated by Audit Scotland. So what we do as a local authority, we submit a number of data sets through the Cabinet Office secure system, and our data is matched with a number of other local authority or public sector bodies, for example DWP, where there is it looks as if we've got a match where, for an example I could give you, we've got a single person discount applied at a property, but the electoral roll information alerts us to the fact that there's a second adult living at that property, that would come up as a match. So the team are responsible for investigating those matches. Not all of them will turn out to be fraud or error, because there's a lot that we would class as a positive match. And an example I could give you there would be where we've got a housing benefit match, against other records, and it basically what the system is doing is it's matching a name and an address with a name and an address. But when we delve into that further, it's right for them to get a housing benefit as well as having a job within the council. We've got cases like that where we've got employees who are also in receipt of housing benefit, but because the de minimis level of housing benefit hasn't been reached, there's no impact in terms of the discount that they've been given. So we would call that a positive match, but we still have to sift it. We still have to review it just to make sure that all income has been declared. So we will look at those cases. We will review the systems that finance has used just to check that the income that's been declared through the NFI has been declared through the council's processes.
Thank you, Andy. Could I ask you a rhetorical question? Do you have enough staff to handle these investigations?
The team, we have two excellent investigators, and in terms of the resources, we have a 2-year period to progress this. What we also do at Inverclyde is we have a decentralised process. So where we have, for example, the blue badge matches that come up, although our team will support the team out in the service, we've pushed the matches out, so it's a combined effort. So we will monitor the process, we'll coordinate the process, but for example, some of the services like creditors matches, it will be the finance accounts payable team that will be primarily responsible for reviewing those matches, but we will check in from time to time to see how they're getting on with those matches, and if we can provide any resource or assistance in undertaking those investigations. So in terms of our, do we have sufficient resources, given we have successfully reviewed over 99% of the matches every year, I believe, since it started in 2006, I would say the council dedicates sufficient resources to this exercise.
Thank you, Andy.
Any further questions from members? We'll now move on to agenda item number 6.
Thanks, Chair. So this is the annual report on risk management activity, and it sets out a number of key areas where the council has continued to maintain its focus in risk management and key processes and emerging risks, including Brexit and COVID-19 pandemic. And you'll be aware, members, that the Audit Committee approved the updated risk management monitoring and reporting process, and that was obviously an update was discussed in an earlier item on today's agenda. We do have a number of specific regularity audits on the audit plans, which still keep a focus on fraud risk, and that was an ongoing exercise for the team, and the annual audit plan, which is reported separately to the Audit Committee. Happy to take any questions on the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions from members? Okay. We'll move on to agenda number 7.
Thank you, Colleen. Just briefly, this is a report primarily put before the committee from colleagues in Audit Scotland, and Martha Laird is attending the meeting today, and I'm sure we have to answer any questions. It really is the audit plan. This is effectively sets out how Audit Scotland will go about the audit of the council's accounts and other aspects of the annual report and accounts. But I'm happy to hand over to Mark to answer any questions the collective members may have.
Would you like to make some comments on the paper, Mark?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'll just hopefully it's fairly self-explanatory, but as Alan said, this is our annual plan for the 21-22 audit year. As you'll be aware, this would normally, I suppose, come to the committee earlier in the year. However, obviously due to the elections, that's been delayed till now. However, it was provided to management back in March. Page 4 sets out our responsibilities, just as well as the council's responsibilities under the Code of Audit Practice. It also mentions a bit about the transitional arrangements, with this being the final year of our audit appointment within the Clyde Council. Page 6 just shows the risks of material misstatement that have been identified in our planning process. The first of which is management overriding control. This is a risk under ISA 240 that cannot be rebutted, so it features in all of our annual audit plans. The other is estimation and valuation of land and buildings. Again, this is quite a common risk, especially given the size of the council and the sizable amounts on the balance sheet for these items. So it's important that we get the necessary assurances from management and from the council's valuers in relation to that. The second column in that table just shows the assurances provided by management, and the final column outlines the planned work that we have for the year. I don't plan to say too much more, but I would like to just take this opportunity to, if I may, we contacted the previous chair of the Audit Committee just to ascertain whether there are any issues they wish to raise in relation to fraud. We're required to do this just to contact those charged with governance in relation to this as part of our audit. So I'll just take this opportunity to invite members of the new Audit Committee to contact myself or David Jamieson should they wish to raise any such issues. Happy to take any questions on the paper though, thank you.
Okay. No. Thank you for that, Mark. Is any members got questions on that? No. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for attending. That ends our first audit meeting.